Yes, you may proceed.
Good morning, honorable members of RDC. Good morning to staff on the call and any listeners who may be joining us this morning. I am joined with our department managers and staff from the Division of Community Development. Otto Shea, Pearl, Yellowman, and Shia. In Schlinigi A, Tenabitli, in Schlindog, is a Lena Bushichin. Trobahanda Shiche, Arohana, Nida Chanela. I was born and raised in the Tuba City area, but have found myself returning back to Testa Anna, Lupton, is where my mother is from, Louise, and enjoy returning back to that side of my home community as well. I also have members of our department managers here from ASC, CHID, and CPMD, and we look forward to a productive meeting this morning, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sunlotzer Jim Martin.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? I mean, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Ayat Ebene. This is Samlatsa Jim Martin, ASC Department Manager with the Division of Community Development. Good morning to our honorable delegates and the staff. In Schlinigi Ayat Sanabechni in Schle, as Andene Abashichin, as Andene Dashinala do Ashihe Dashiche.
Thank you. We have Ms. Helen Brown on the call with us from Auditor General's office. Auditor General's office. Anybody else on the call with us this morning? Mr. Tahi, did you contact the Auditor General's office?
The chair making that connection right now too.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, Shananta, my announcement will be the Navajo Nation's District Grazing Officials Training is on December 14 and 15, which is a Tuesday and Wednesday. That's one reason why we cancel our RDC meeting on the 15th so we can travel over there starting the 13th. So we would like to have our colleagues attend and support our grazing officials. And I don't know if the land board from Eastern will be there, but just for your information, an email was sent out again this morning. We would appreciate if you would please confirm your attendance. Registration, and so I'll be going down there on the 13th. So that's my announcement. And are there any other announcements?
Chairman Freeland.
Honorable Freeland.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, colleagues. Sorry, I'm over here at the post office. Tomorrow we have Eastern Agency Council. Beginning at 9 a.m. and there's a lot of resolutions on there. It might take all day. I don't know. Usually, our last meeting lasted over 11 hours, and there's one resolution in particular that might be of interest to the committee, and it pertains. Of course, all the resolutions might be of interest to the committee, but the one that I'm going to pay special attention to involves the resolution around Chaco Canyon and the 20-mile buffer, opposing the 20-year moratorium for Chaco. So that's being sponsored by our chapter president, Naizi, Mr. Irvin Chavez. So it should be an interesting discussion tomorrow, Chairman. If you have some time, dial in. I know we have NIP and RDC as well. But if my colleagues, if you have some time, I'll send you the link. Please get a chance to listen to Eastern Agency Council if you get a chance, and it should be interesting discussion. So, and then my question, it relates to the District Grazing Committee. I did send an email to Ms. Roxy June asking if land boards were going to be out there as well, or if it's going to be a separate meeting. So I don't know if that's going to be the case, Chairman. Thank you.
I'm hoping that Ms. June would respond to your email, Honorable Freeland. And if you would also send us the call-in number for the Eastern Agency Council meeting, we would appreciate that. And I have one other announcement, Shananta. There was a scheduled joint meeting between the Navajo Indian Irrigation Project Subcommittee and Law and Order Committee and RDC Committee to have this meeting tomorrow morning starting at 10 o'clock. You can attend in person at NAPI headquarters. I'll be there at the headquarters tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So if I do have time throughout the day, I'll try and call into the Eastern Agency to listen to the allottees' concerns that they have around Chaco Canyon. So, any other announcements, Mr. Tahe?
The chair members of RDC, the only announcement I have right now is we have a tentative schedule special meeting for Monday, December 6th at 7 a.m. at the current time. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tahe, and we do appreciate you sending us reminders every Sunday afternoon. It helps us to prepare for the week. I know my colleagues at the beginning of the month up to midway through the month, they have a lot of planning meetings and regular chapter meetings they have to attend at their local levels too. So, Shananta, I know most of you have meetings today as well, and hopefully we can wrap everything up by 12 o'clock at noon. So, any other announcements, Shananta? None. We'll move down to the purpose of our leadership meeting. Hey, Kuro, Resources and Development. Before I move on, let me identify Honorable Chairman Otto So is on the call with us. Joe? Honorable Otto So. Press star 6. Resources and Development. Before I move on, let me identify Honorable Chairman. Honorable Otto So. We'll move down to the purpose of our leadership meeting. Sunanda. The Resource and Development Committee requested a meeting with Dr. Yellowman's Department Division of Community Development, as well as the Administrative Service Centers, which is overseen also by Ms. Sanlotsa Jim Martin, and also invited the Office of the Auditor General to discuss the DCD's plan of operation this morning, an update, and then from the Auditor General's office, the subject will be on sanctioned chapters and corrective action plans. At the local level. So on the agenda, on number 3, the presentation and discussions. First on here will be the presentation by DCD on their plan of operation update by Dr. Yellowman and Ms. Jim Martin. So you have the floor at this time.
Okay, good morning, Chair. Can you hear me again?
Yes, we can hear you. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you. And we do have quite a bit to present. We did send a copy of our presentation, both a PowerPoint presentation and a written narrative to our presentation to Mr. Tohi, and I'm sure he's distributing that. We've met before on our plan of operation with RDC. It was June of 2021, and we appreciate the follow-up. There are areas that need special attention, and we hope to move in that direction for some of the areas that we like to propose today. The other, as I start to move forward on my presentation, I'll cover the Division of Community Development Administration, and then I'd like to turn the time over to each of our department managers who will go into each of their respective departments. And as I see that whole lineup, our department managers are very skilled and knowledgeable in each of the divisions or the departments they represent. And I see this as our blueprint for moving forward, and each department manager will contribute to how important it is for us to have a solid blueprint, such as our plan of operation. It's not just to improve services, but it's really to match the demands that we see throughout Navajo Nation. And we see so many challenges and demands from the chapters, community, emergencies, the pandemic. And I am truly grateful that we do have the skilled and knowledgeable department managers who will carry out these tasks that we're proposing. The other is, I was thinking about it this week after it was confirmed that we were meeting this week. We designed our plan of operations with high objectives. And I know that the current department managers are skilled enough to reach those high objectives because we only tend to the needs and challenges at the community level. And you'll see that represented here in our presentation. You'll see that not only are we dealing with daily policies and procedures, but on a daily basis, we deal with quite a bit of individuals, different behaviors, personalities. We deal with laws. We deal with people who follow the law, and we deal with people who don't follow the law. We're a very unique division, and we're a very large division. So we plan to present that in our presentation today, and we plan to give a whole picture of what DCD encounters daily and what we hope to change in our plan of operation that will alleviate and maybe make some ripple effects down into the community level that helps support local governance, that help enhance, as it's stated in Title 26, is to excel at the local governance, but also to make it possible for a true government to exist. And I also know we have ongoing discussions with Navajo Government Development, DOJ. We really cannot have a division that is so connected to the Navajo Nation work solely on its own. We have to work with other divisions. We have to work with OMB, OOC, DOJ. And so with that, Chair, I'll go ahead and start my presentation. And Rodney, if you can just kind of give me a thumbs up that it has been, the presentation has been sent out I'll go ahead and proceed, and I'll start with our first slide. And the purpose of our division is to develop a dynamic and cohesive plan for community development activities, and to provide relevant community education for growth throughout the Navajo Nation. Our goals are to help to contribute to self-sufficiency, not only in policy, but also in personal behavior and personal endeavors. We do want our leaders to be self-sufficient and our local governments to be self-sustaining. We also want to provide quality construction and community public facility buildings that align with harmony with the Navajo people's needs. Our goals and objectives, our goals are to provide technical assistance. That's a high priority. Provide technical assistance and administrative support at chapter government in its development of becoming self-sustaining and self-governing entities through coordination with local, county, state, and federal government offices. Our second goal is to improve the standard of living for the Navajo people and individuals through the use of modern methods and techniques in the construction of new homes and rehabilitations of existing infrastructure. We also like to promote and foster land use planning and growth management through policies and practices. And the planning is so important, to be in the practice of planning and to provide technical services in developing plans cooperatively with communities for proper solid waste management and disposal systems. And again, proposing our solid waste management really goes back to behaviors. It's again ties into our respect to land, our respect to one another, how we live on this land. So we really hope to capture all of that today. Lastly, to provide technical services and administrative support in coordination with appropriate entities to plan, implement, and maintain rural addressing systems to support the enhanced 911 Navajo nationwide. Our organization is comprised of 4 large departments that execute the division's purpose, goals, and objectives. And the 4 departments may exist. We have a current existing department, but we also have proposed sections for these programs and agencies to accomplish their purpose. And they are as follows: our division administration, our solid waste management department, which is proposed, our proposed rural addressing authority department, to increase or provide improvements for community housing and infrastructure department, to increase improvements for administrative service center departments, and increase capital project management department capacity. You'll see in our presentation, members of RDC, you'll see in our presentation on slide 6, it is a draft of our organizational chart and our proposed organizational flow of communication. I have personally found and practiced the use of working with our agency council or agency representatives from the chapters, and they play a significant role in our chain of communication and chain of recommendations. They speak through their resolutions, and from there we work with their respective council delegates to act upon those resolutions. And you'll see in our page 6 how that process plays out or what it visually looks like under the Administrative Service Center. Moving on to page 7 or slide 7 of our presentation. Again, you are also provided a written narrative of my presentation, but our current DCD Master Plan of Operation are authorities that have been bestowed or entrusted into this division. It states that the Executive Director shall have the authority for the overall division's operation, planning, and direction. And the Executive Director shall have the following duties and responsibilities. And first is the purpose of the Administration Office is to provide an overall management to the division. And the administrative staff shall handle its duties and responsibilities in accordance with the Navajo Nation laws and policies. The duties and responsibilities are as follows. We'll transition into the departments, which is part of the duties and responsibilities. But before I turn over my time here, Chair, I want to state that on slide 7, we do have responsibilities and duties as a division. But one of the major goals that has been accomplished, unfortunately, it took almost 2 years to do, but we established a Deputy Division Director position. And the purpose of that was really to provide stability to the division. We have staff here who have worked at DCD for 10, 15, 20 years. We've recently had some staff who've retired after 30 years. And they have shared their experiences of, I guess, weathering different administrations. And with each administration comes major changes. And this division, along with some of the chapters, become very vulnerable to that change. So with the establishment of a deputy director, the deputy director can provide some continuity and stability in the event that myself or in the future division directors enter and exit this division. The other that had not existed was the position of a senior accountant. And this senior accountant is critical to a division that operates financial and fiscal responsibilities to 110 chapters and to a very large division that also has the responsibility of capital outlay funds for the state of Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. And so we really internally needed to build a team that could withstand the duties and responsibilities that we have been entrusted with. So with that, Chair, I would like to turn the time over to Mr. Dalgai, which is slide 8 in your presentation, and Mr. Dalgai will proceed with the purpose, goals, and objectives and responsibilities and duties of the Community Housing and Infrastructure Department. So, Chair, if I may, I'd like to turn the time over to Mr. Patrick Dalgai.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yellowman. Mr. Dalgai, you may proceed.
Okay. Hello, Yate, Chair. Can you hear?
Mr. Dalgai, you're breaking up. Mr. Dalgai. Mr. Dalgai.
Chair, this is Rodney.
Yes.
Mr. Delgado looked like he was knocked off the call.
Okay. Dr.
Chair,
Yellowman,
have,
Dr. Yellowman, could you have your staff kind of be stationed in one place where they can have phone reception so we don't have these technical difficulties?
will do, sir. We do have staff. Mr. Adekai is available to present, and his department is next in line on slide 14. And if we can return back to Chid when Mr. Dalgai is in a more secure place.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, everybody that's on the call, we would appreciate if you would please mute your phones. Thank you. Mr. Adekai, you have the floor. Mr. James Adekai.
Hello, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is
Yes.
Mr. Delgay. Okay. Sorry about that.
Mr. Delgay.
I'm on the.
We would appreciate it if you just park on the side of the road if you are on the road and complete your presentation for us. Thank you.
Okay. Will do, sir. Okay. Yate. Good morning, Chair and RDC members. Yeah. This is Patrick Delgay, Department Manager for Community Housing Infrastructure Department. I've been with the Community Housing Infrastructure Department in this position as Department Manager for a little over 2 years, and since being in this position, we've gone through many tasks, responsibilities to operate our daily operations through the Community Housing Infrastructure Department. And these offices, I have Housing Improvement Program, and then also the ICDBG program. Each have, these two programs are federally 100% funded. They receive funding every year. They have been receiving funds every year. BIA is a annual allocation based off of application, formula driven. Then also the ICDBG is a competitive grant, which we compete for funding annually against other tribes within our Southwest region. And so the funds aren't guaranteed, but as of late, we were successful in submitting grant applications and getting funds awarded to the nation. So going through CHID's plan of operation, we have slide number 9. The purpose of CHID is to strengthen communities and to improve the living conditions of Navajo families by developing comprehensive strategies for housing, utility services, public facilities, and improve energy efficiency for existing homes. And in slide 10, CHID consists of following sections, the functions to accomplish our purpose, our projects. And One is in the following slide 11. I have administrative organization flow chart, and it does show the three offices under the Division of Community Development. And as of late, we got the program manager on board with the Housing and Improvement Program. The recent program manager retired back in April of this past year. So we were able to fulfill this position as of beginning of November. So the program manager is now overseeing the HIP program. Her name is Rita Begay, and she has overseen also the agency offices. We have 4 agency offices. 2 are in operation. Other 2 are not in operation due to lack of funding to hire eligibility technicians. So they're right now in the process of hiring eligibility technicians now that they have funding to cover the 2 vacant positions. The Community Housing Infrastructure Department is in process also in hiring a senior electrician for the department. This position will be funded under general funds, more flexibility as opposed to a federally hired electrician. So this will give us an electrician to do house wiring for power line projects and house wiring for housing improvement program projects. And so this position is very much needed, and I would like to present this in our next budget season to request for additional funding to continue this position, which is direly needed. Right now, our CDB, or the CHID program department administration funding is very low, and annual allocation for our department is a little over $300,000 annually. And so we'd like to request additional funding for the position, and also for other positions that I would like to get position as far as possibly a plumber and maybe a program manager also within this department to oversee larger projects and building public facility projects. The Housing Improvement Program, or the ICBG program, currently have 4 staff, 1 vacant due to retirement, and we are now also in the process of getting that position filled here shortly, which is the senior office specialist, and then also a field supervisor to pretty much oversee and supervise that program. We have planning in our program for all funding and also for incoming projects federally and tribal. We've increased our funding and additional task from the BIA under the 93-638 contract for DFMC projects. And so that was assigned to the Division of Community Development under the Community Housing Infrastructure Department to oversee and implement building facilities, public facilities under the BIA funding source or agency. Contract management, we oversee a lot of power line projects, so we do subrecipient agreements, Subpart J contracts, and then also we'll be getting into general and subcontracting. Construction management with our housing program, compliance and monitoring on a daily basis through our programs, making sure they're in compliance with the CFRs in place for these federally funded programs. So we did have other federal programs, but those programs have been, I guess, haven't been operating. And that was weatherization, NAHASDA. Those are other funding sources that we had in previous years, going back to about almost a little over 10 years. So as of 2017, those programs have not been in operation due to lack of funding. So those are the three offices we currently have at this time. So we're seeking other housing and infrastructure, possibly other housing and infrastructure programs within the CHID department to bring in additional funding, whether it be for housing, public facilities, for infrastructure. And so these are the type of services we currently provide to our chapters and to the community members. So also there was, I believe there was a written Word document on the plan of operation that was submitted to you with some changes and languages redlined in the CHID plan of operation. So those have all been submitted, and with some additional tasks, we'd like to also include the burnouts, debris removal. A lot of requests have been submitted to our department for these services, and currently we don't have any programs within our division or other divisions or departments that handle these type of services. And so this is also going to be needing additional funding to have these type of services taken care of for the community members, so they can rebuild, possibly rebuild in the same location. Reason is infrastructure services are already provided, and so those are kind of the main key points in the amendment to the Community Housing Infrastructure Department plan of operations currently at this time. So that's what I have right now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delguy. Back to you, Dr. Yellowman.
Thank you, Chair and members of RDC. Thank you, Mr. Delguy. Our next presenter will be Mr. Atakai from Capital Projects Management Department. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Atakai.
This is James Atakai. Aro nda iya don't mention iya not often kachin with ahmi itashi for the chin itashi topa the final le seven just came on about it the shia has been ashish chento kehbek large army Hamdani chair Ricky Nez, honorable members of the RDC committee at the Navajo Nation Council, and the legislative staff, Dr. Pearl Yellowman, and the DCDC staff. So I'll go ahead and start with slide 15 for capital projects management.
Mr. Adekai? Mr. Adekai? Mr. Tahi? Is Mr. Adekai on the call?
Chair, Mr. Adekai was knocked off. I don't see him on the call any longer.
Chair, we are in the building, so we're all calling from similar lines. I don't know if there's just technical difficulties, but we're resolving things on our end too as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Yate. Got disconnected. I apologize for that. Can I continue?
Yes, you may proceed.
Okay, Yate. On slide 15, Capital Projects Management Department. What it's
Oh, Kadita.
okay, all right. I have to change my phone. Purpose and mission is basically to assist the Navajo Nation divisions, chapters, other entities serving, the Navajo Nation for the planning and implementation of public facilities and infrastructure for the following. One is to provide programmatic planning, design, project construction management. Second is to seek and secure funding from the Navajo Nation, federal, state, and other agencies. Third, comply with the Navajo Nation and external funding source requirements, and also maintain programmatic and financial policies for prioritizing and estimating capital improvement projects. So essentially, the department is responsible for procurement, contract development, and also administering construction services for capital projects, and also infrastructure. There are two organizational units. We have commercial building, yacht design, planning, and construction of community facilities. In Sagunda, Nelegi, multi-purpose building, though chapter houses that. Taje infrastructure and housing, a bathroom addition, though power line, house wire, that the chapters or other divisions, and also we also assist Deltek's senior citizen projects under state-funded activities through the state of New Mexico and other federally funded projects, and we assist other divisions as well. And also with multiple resources, state and federal and other funding, and even the county, or non-profit or for-profit leverage monies that to support our projects. And of course, the requirements, there are strings attached to these funding, so we had to comply with those, and also to follow the financial management system with the Navajo Nation in order to do, the projects, from the planning, the implementation, and the closeout process of the whole implementation. Next slide on 16, number 16, it talks about the organization. Planning is one. We have planners also, and also we have project manager that are engaged with, some project planning with the chapters and the federal agencies, also doing the design as well, and project construction management, again, funding and compliance. Slide 17, the ones that are not color coded, these are positions that we're looking at. They are separated by planning, design. If you look to the top, they're like columns, and project construction management and funding and compliance. The color coded, those are existing positions. Auto color code yellow, those are 17 positions that we are requesting as a supplemental. We also have budget prepared for that, and this was also presented to the RDC back in June. We're taking care of a large volume of projects. We have close to 100 million. Over 200 projects, and then we have state-funded projects also, Navajo, New Mexico. We also have Utah Navajo Trust Fund, Navajo Revitalization Fund, leveraging some of our projects and other federal funding as well, in Arizona and the 3 states. We only have 22 staff that we budgeted for this fiscal year, FY 2022. And only about 17 of them are the field staff. And we're also down by 6 staff who retired, and we're in the process of filling those positions this year. Projects over 300. You what the Navajo State that peso Nadat Ahagi New Mexico peso support staff. It's good that we have all these monies, that we have all these resources, to assist the chapters on their projects, but we just need a lift in order to carry them out successfully. Slide 17. The organizational the organizational chart on the 18th. So basically, this is the same thing. We have the position numbers that are reflected on these positions, white color existing. We're able to add one more position in our regular budget project manager, so that kind of put our the availability of the operation, the administration budget. Also, we had to do salary adjustment for the registered architect position. We finally got that adjusted after the new fiscal year started. The salary was over 20 years old. As I recall, we had to up the salary because no one was applying. So the organizational structure, going down to page 19, talks about Capital Projects Management Department, CPMD authorities, duties, and responsibilities. So I report to the executive director of our division, which we do every Tuesday. We have our department managers meeting. We update, projects, funding, and any concerns. On the formulating overall administrative operating policies and procedures necessary for effective management for the CPMD and take appropriate actions to accomplish the purpose. We're able to streamline some processes with the project management with respect to CSN Nigia. We modified the change form into one. We also worked on rules and regulations in accordance to the CSN legislation that made a directive to our department to work with the Department of Justice, Controller's Office, Office of Management and Budget to put together rules and regulations to further streamline change form process for CSN. Oversight Committee, RDC, Budget and Finance Committee, that will give the authority of the to approve the change form requests on CSN to the division director. With state funded projects, there are some challenges regarding, how in accordance to the intergovernmental agreements with the state of New Mexico, they have a timeline, expenditure timeline requirement that within 6 months and 5% of the funds should be expended. And we had some challenges and complications due to COVID-19 pandemic and other, complications. We did present it to the Indian Affairs Committee with the state legislature, and share our concerns that they should adjust the requirements. Any other funding agency peso, so Aaron, the conduct periodic reviews and evaluation of staff. CPMD department Uh, it's been 2 years. Right now, I serve as Capital Projects Management Department Director, and the annual performance appraisal were outdated. So I worked on it with the staff going back to over 5 years. So we're now current. So hopefully we will also provide some incentives as well, in the future. Aron the EYA prepare annual fiscal operating budget for approval by the executive branch of the Navajo Nation Oversight Committee and the Navajo Nation Council, and that's what we've been doing, every fiscal year, and also supplemental do they need to represent the Navajo Nation, local, state, and federal level. So we do our best, to communicate, collaborate with the funding agencies regarding the ongoing activities, how we can improve the process. And we have a good communication with the state of New Mexico. We just did some reports back to them. We also did a reconciliation meeting with them on the projects recently. So that's ongoing. And then also, of course, with the Utah chapters, we also have periodic CPMD project updates, and also our communication with the federal agencies as well with regards to ARPA and CARES projects, as well as other funding under the federal agencies that have the nation to administer. And then slide 20 talks about duties and responsibilities. CPMD shall, one, provide comprehensive planning, design, project, and construction management. Second, seek and secure funding from the Navajo Nation, federal, state, and other agencies. B, comply with internal and external funding sources. 4, implement and maintain essential electronic filing and project tracking system. We're streamlining our records management, and perhaps we'd like to do electronic filing. And also, we do have a system in place that we need to get the staff on that, on the WIN system. It's a project tracking system. We have been doing that for the state-funded projects with New Mexico, and we will continue to do that. So that's a good tracking tool to manage our projects. 5, assist in the application for external funding to administer projects that are consistent with the CPMD. 6, develop policies, procedures to implement the purpose of CPMD. 7, use and abide by the International Building Code maintained by the International Code Council. There, here on the reservation, the county, the state, the federal, there's international building codes, plumbing codes, electrical codes. So that's already there. So I know that, our department, one of the departments, Community Housing Infrastructure, been working on housing quality standards, basically to satisfy federal funding agencies, in order to meet the requirement as a division. 8, purchase and inventory equipment and furnishing. 9, ensure capital improvement projects or completed in a cost and efficient manner, and conduct all duties related to the development of capital improvement plan as provided in Title 12. We've started the process a year ago. COVID-19 pandemic happened, so we do have a draft going. So there are multiple work that we're involved with, that we're engaged with right now. So we will still address this. So up in the social capital improvement plan. So this will be a tool planning to, for projects, maybe a 5-year plan that we can use to seek external funding. So 11, conduct periodic work sessions and or project meetings to provide information on active and project status. And 12, carry out other duties and responsibilities as assigned by the executive director. Now, that's what I have to cover the capital projects management department. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arakai Aro, non-Nashigi, Ben according to the plan of operation. Dr. Yellowman, back to you.
Thank you, Chair and members of RDC, and any community members listening in, chapter officials, chapter staff, and members from 24th Navajo Nation Council. Our next presenter is Department Manager Sanlotsa Jim Martin from the Administrative Service Center. Chair, if she could present, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jim Martin, you may proceed.
Yeah, Shanant, again, this is Sanlotsa Jim Martin, ASC Department Manager. I'll be covering the ASC department starting on slide 22. First, I want to thank all of our RDC committee members for your ongoing support and guidance for ASC and all of our SPPS staff out in the field, our ASC offices. I did introduce myself earlier, but for those just joining, I'd like to go ahead and introduce myself. Again, I am the ASC Department Manager in Shlenigi Eyat Sanabethlin Shle, as Andine Ebashichin, as Andine Edashinalado, Ashihidachiche. I've been in the ASC Department Manager role for a little less than 2 years right now. I came on board with the Division of Community Development as a new senior planner initially. And during my term assisting Dr. Pearl Yellowman as the senior planner, we did have a vacancy in the ASC Department Manager position. I was then delegated in acting capacity to manage the ASC department while the advertisement and recruiting for the position was implemented. I did take on the challenge to apply for the department manager position, and I did accept the offer to lead ASC. So it officially began in March 13, 2020 is when I officially became the ASC department manager. 2 weeks later, the COVID pandemic hit us. And so for the majority of my term as ASC department manager, I've been mitigating the COVID emergency response, working closely with the Health Command Operations Center and also with our agency and ASC offices to help the chapters in their response efforts and also the new way of doing business for us during this pandemic. It has been very challenging. And so what I'll share with you is our proposed amendments, which have been very related to what we learned through this COVID emergency response, the weaknesses that we had, the areas of improvement we identified, and just again, moving forward with the Navajo Nation and our projections with ARPA and also the limited funds that we have right now as a Navajo government. So on slide 22, as you know, the ASC department was established in 2014 initially. And over time, it went through some bumps, went through some changes with the former LGSC. And then now with our new plan of operation, which was amended in 2016 and 2018, we have our ASC service areas. And that's what I've been managing these past 2 years. The purpose of ASC is to monitor and provide technical assistance and training to all 110 chapters. That is really important to clarify, even though we have 45 LGA certified chapters, we still provide technical assistance and training to support them as well. In the next slide, we are sharing our current staffing in our organization and then our proposed positions. For the central administration, we continue to have the department manager, administrative assistant, and office assistant providing support to all 8 offices and all 110 chapters. What we are seeing a need for right now is another position for an administrative service officer, as we are again preparing for more technical assistance and training that we will be providing and implementing out at the service areas as well as with all 110 chapters. For the ASO position, we do have the largest department of employees, which includes the chapter employees. And so it does turn up to be a large amount of personnel documents that we work on. And as you may know, the Division of Community Development has taken on the role and responsibility of implementing qualification assessments with the Department of Personnel Management. So we have an added responsibility at ASC, and we do need an additional staff to assist us in working with personnel matters. We also have a large need for more support with managing our budgets, our chapter budgets through OOC and through the WIN system and MIP. So our additional position will also help us in managing our overall budget responsibilities for chapters and helping provide that support to our ASC offices so that we can be more responsive to all the new budgets coming down the line, which include AIF, ARPA, and additional funds that chapters will be getting. We have at our sub offices, we continue to have our 8 regional offices around the Navajo Nation to provide technical assistance and support to all 110 chapters. At the sub offices, we have a SPPS, our Senior Programs and Project Specialist, our Administrative Service Officer, and Office Specialist. We are proposing at a minimum to bring on an Accounts Maintenance Specialist at our ASC offices. As you know, there's a huge need for that type of technical support at the chapters, and accounts maintenance specialists are highly in need right now. And moving forward with the new funding coming down the line, we'll need that more than ever. So we are recommending for an added position to assist our ASC offices. Again, we will say on the record, these are a minimum, at the minimum for positions we'll need. We do have another alternative recommendation for maximum positions that we would like to explore if there's supplemental funding that can be provided so that we can maximize our staffing at the chapter level and also at the ASC offices in the field. But right now we're sharing the minimum. Also, for slide 24, we're going to go into our organization with the chapters that we manage for personnel. As you know, we have 45 LGA certified chapters that manage their own personnel and also operate a little more independently. For our 65 non-governance certified chapters, we manage personnel and finances and other areas with the chapters, and that includes supervision. So we have at the chapters right now the community services coordinator, as well as the accounts maintenance specialist. There are 2 employees at each chapter. Right now, at a minimum, we are recommending that we add an administrative assistant to the team at the chapter. As many of you know, we do have the PEP Public Employment Program, and we do have PEP workers that are temporary. Usually they are a part of the administrative staff at the chapters assisting with administrative office management. However, we want to create an additional position at the chapter to help administratively get our chapters to have a little more support in their administrative role. As we know, the CSC wears multiple hats and manages multiple areas at the chapters, and the AMS is fully focused on the financial management of the chapter. And so we do need another support staff to help both the CSC and the AMS, particularly because of the new funding that we are projecting and the new roles and responsibilities that we are going to be incurring with our proposed plan of operation. So the non-governance certified chapters, we do manage 65 chapters and their employees, and that makes us one of the largest departments within the Division of Community Development. On the next slide, we do have a draft organizational chart that shows those proposed positions. Again, these are minimum. We would love to entertain additional funding for more positions. We do have the DOJ chapter unit that works closely with my department. We do have arrangements made with the Department of Justice to get more support from a chapter unit, and that is led by Mr. Roderick Begay. With that, we do fund one position under the chapter unit. We do fund that position with the attorney candidate position. In the past, that position was with Naomi Gilmore. Now we have new staff in place. We have Krista Thompson and Cynthia Freeman that are now a part of the DOJ chapter unit assisting Mr. Roderick Begay. And we're very thankful that we do have the chapter unit established because they have been instrumental in helping us get through this pandemic policy-wise, and also reviewing Title 26 and the FMS policies, and also making recommendations for some of the conflicts and issues we've been dealing with at chapters, as well as just routine personnel matters. So it's been very helpful to have that established, and I'm sure they need additional positions within the DCU unit, the chapter unit. Within the organizational chart, we are continuing with our 8 service areas. However, we are streamlining those service areas with the agency chapters. And so on that, we've learned over the last 2 years, especially during the pandemic, that it's very important to streamline our process with the agencies, and then also to work closely with our council delegates as we're responding to not only the pandemic, but also as we're getting prepared for ARPA projects and so forth. So our organizational chart continues to have 8 sub-offices, but they will be reassigned and realigned to the agency chapters that they'll be assigned to. And we already were planning this process at the beginning before the pandemic, but once that happened, we weren't able to continue the transition and working with the chapters to help them and get them prepared. But now, as we're starting to get our new business, our new order of operations going, we're able to meet with chapters and get the transitions planned out with our ASC staff. And so we don't see this happening until everything is completed towards the latter part of the fiscal year and into the new fiscal year. But it's very, it's going to be very helpful in getting our agencies aligned. And also we're recommending an accounts maintenance specialist at our ASC offices. That position can also float when we do have vacancies, and you're all aware that we have ongoing vacancies at the ASC department. We have a lot of staff leave, a lot of staff come and go. We want to have at least an accounts maintenance specialist who will be on board to float and help chapters as needed, and then also our ASC offices. We also are recommending at the chapters, again, an administrative assistant. That would bring up our budget to 3 staff at each chapter for all 65 non-governance certified chapters. So our budget would definitely increase, and we would need supplemental funding to cover all of this. For our next slide, on slide 26, we do have the ASC duties and authorities that have been condensed and also streamlined a little better so that we have it clear. Prior, our current plan of operation is very extensive, and that was really done because it was a new department and a lot of questions needed to be addressed with the previous council. But now with our 2 years into getting ready for our amended plan of operations, we've cleaned it up. And with the help of our DOJ chapter unit, we've been able to study Title 26 further. We've been able to look deeper into the 5 management system, do some analysis and policy review so that we can better support the chapters and be in line with the laws and policies that are currently established. These also include former policies that we are still functioning under from the former TCDC. And so there's additional policy work that we are addressing and wanting to meet with RDC on so that we can help support the chapters with updated policies and also getting us in line with Title 26 with additional clarification. We do work with Mr. Roderick Begay out of the chapter unit, and he works also closely with requests coming from the Office of Navajo Government Development, and also when there are questions regarding the history of chapters and the Title 26 and even Title 2, there's a lot of questions that we help address when it comes to preparing for future chapter reform. In slide 26, you'll see that the ASC department manager is supervised by the executive director with DCD. And one of the big changes that we are working on right now is addressing direct local supervision. That has taken much of our time in our plan of operation amendments. As you know, the chapters the chapters are comprised of chapter officials and
Roger, could you give me a call? This is Eunice Begay.
Eunice, can you mute your phone? Thank you. So our chapter officials right now can be in the role of the direct local supervisor to the CSC. We have that in our current ASC plan of operation, where one chapter official is designated to supervise the CSC. And this is with our 65 non-governance certified chapters. And that has caused some problems, and it has worked with some chapters. So we have made amendments to our plan of operation to help get this addressed. We've been meeting with not only our DOJ chapter unit, we've also been meeting with the DOJ personnel litigation unit as we continue to address some employee grievances and also address some outstanding concerns regarding supervision. So in our amendments, we are recommending that the SPPS be delegated as the supervisors to the chapter CSCs on the onset, while we get our chapter officials prepared to step into those roles as supervisors. Right now, that system is not set up. Once the new chapter officials come in to their role, there is not enough time to get them trained on supervision and also trained on the Navajo Nation Personnel Policy Manual, which you all know is very extensive. And so to address that, we are recommending that SPPS step into the role of direct local supervisor on the onset, while we assist our chapter officials who will be stepping in that role or wanting to step into that role as supervisor to get them extensive training. We have developed a supervisory training plan so that we can get all of our supervisors trained on the personnel policy manual, each section, and then also what the Navajo Nation has set up for supervisors in addressing their issues or concerns when it comes to employee performance, and also addressing employee conflict or any of those types of issues that continue to arise. Many of the chapters have requested for supervisory training, and we are setting that up now so that we can implement it with our new plan of operation. We also have the DOJ chapter unit and the DOJ personnel litigation unit that have additional steps and procedures that they would like to also train our chapter staff and chapter officials on. So to set that all up, we will need to get prepared for this in our new plan of operation. We also know that there could be a vacancy with a CSC at the chapter. And because the chapters are spread out so wide, supervision has always been a concern. So what we are recommending in our plan of operation is that we address those situations of CSC vacancies through the department manager so that we can set up the best course of action for supervision at the chapters. Right now, if we get the administrative assistant position established, we will be able to delegate that administrative assistant to help supervise PEP workers and so forth. So there are some areas that will probably have supervisors ready to step in, and then there'll be other areas where we're going to have to make adjustments to help the chapters when they have a CSC vacancy. Those are some of the main issues to summarize direct local supervision as it is right now for the chapters and getting the appropriate training to our chapter officials before they step into that role. That's going to help all of us, particularly when it comes to some of the employee grievances we've been handling with DOJ. The last part of the presentation on this slide, we are discussing that the chapter CSC report to the delegated supervisor. As chapter officials get reelected or new elected officials come in, there's always that need and that tendency to not have that appropriate transition. And so for our CSCs, we do need to have that set up more effectively. And the CSCs also, when they're supervising their staff, to have that chain of command established more effectively. So that is something that we will continue to do within our plan of operation. On the next slides, 27 and 28, this has been consolidated from our current plan of operation, which was redundant in many areas. So we consolidated the duties and responsibilities and streamlined them a little more, so it provides more clarity. So for ASC, our duties and responsibilities shall include developing rules and policies for the implementation of this plan of operation that is consistent with our Navajo Nation laws and policies. We also, as a ASC, our duties will include assisting chapters with their budgets and ensuring the chapters' expenditures are comply with the applicable Navajo Nation laws and policies. We also will provide training to chapter administration on the correct process of entering data into the WIN system and also the chapter fund management systems. We'll also assist chapters with any coordination needed with other departments and programs. We continue to do this. And then we'll also continue to assist chapter administrative staff and elected officials with understanding and segregating their duties to ensure chapters flourish to meet local needs. And we also will assist chapters in becoming governance certified and maintain compliance with their 5 management system. And those of you who are aware, our chapters are following their 5 management system manuals, and that's what they get audited on as well. We'll also assist chapters with uniform records and community projects. Again, this is something we continue to do and want to improve on with our new plan of operation. ASC will also assist chapters with personnel matters. We continue to do that, and that is a big piece of the direct local supervision. We'll also be assisting chapters with audits and the implementation of the corrective action plans, which we have been doing. I think with the added staff, that'll help us, and then also streamlining our services to the agencies will also help the Auditor General and her staff as they provide these audits. And then also we will conduct monthly reviews of chapter activities as we have been doing, but just to be clear, when a chapter is determined to not be in compliance with any policy, then the SPPS will inform the chapters in writing, and the chapters that has not responded with a plan of action to address their discrepancies within 20 working days, the ASC will notify the appropriate authority, which may include but not be limited to the Department of Justice, the Office of the Controller, the Auditor's Office, or the Ethics and Rules Office. It's really important that we establish how we support the chapters and then the responsibility that the chapters have to follow through. And then also we at ASC, when there's non-compliance activity found, the ASC will ensure the appropriate disciplinary measures are initiated. This relates to possible fraud and also other areas that we continue to address. So with the ASC's role, we do have a huge responsibility to provide that support and guidance to the chapters. And again, it's going to come down to the chapters to follow through on with their roles. And then ASC will carry out the responsibilities as assigned by the department manager. During this pandemic, We've had additional duties, additional assignments, additional roles in ASC. We continue to be the hub and the link between DCD and all 110 chapters. And over the pandemic, you're aware that we've had to assist in other roles that are not outlined in our plan of operations, such as facilitating truck deliveries to chapters with supplies, or helping establish staging operations with chapters. And even just right now, we're in the process of working with the Division of Natural Resources in coordinating the new agriculture infrastructure funds. And so we take on added duties and added roles through ASC because of our close coordination with all 110 chapters. So that will continue. So with that, Shananta'a, I wanted to just give you that brief overview and thank you for that time. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Jim Martin. Back to you, Dr. Yellowman.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you to our department managers, Chair, and members of RDC. If we could now transition into two proposed departments that currently do not exist. Our staff have done quite a bit of work in resurfacing the need for these two departments. We have some history as to how these departments were abolished, I guess, and that is the Solid Waste Management Department and the need for solid waste. Also, the implications of currently not having a solid waste. We are fully aware of the illegal dumping sites that occur throughout Navajo Nation. We're fully aware of a lot of the hazards and biohazards that occur or exist throughout Navajo Nation. And this, very fortunate during this administration to work closely with Director Valinda Shirley from Navajo EPA to assist us in moving forward. And then most recently, we were able to hire a full-time individual to focus just on solid waste management department and to reconnect with all of the current transfer stations and different forms of solid waste services throughout the Navajo Nation. That is this individual's primary task, to do that, and also to provide recommendations to us, DCD administration, in both traditional and alternative concepts to solid waste management. And traditional, I just mean being original land stewards of Mother Earth, and then to seek alternative methods of how to recycle and be more, utilize more methods in advancing our solid waste management plan. So with that, I would like to turn the time back over to Ms. Jim Martin, who will present the Solid Waste Management Department. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Yellowman. Ms. Jim Martin?
Yeah, Nana Shananda. I will go ahead and go into some of the work we've been engaged in with solid management. And again, as I started as a senior planner with DCD, this was one of our tasks that we were initially working on. So I'm assisting in the development of the proposed solid waste management department. Before we get into slide 30, I would like to ask our RDC members to go to slide 35. I can start there just to give you a brief overview of the history. One of the main reasons we worked on this was at the request of our leadership. and bringing back this much needed resource to the Navajo Nation. In April 2016, a comprehensive solid waste management plan was needed, and from that time there was plans in the works to address the transition from waste disposal to recycling, to address reducing dependency upon outside companies to transport and dispose of Navajo Nation waste, and also to adopt a plan for a major step in the progress towards getting this initiative started. The intent of that discussion in 2016 was to address the planning, development, policies, and structure of a solid waste management department. But since that time, there have been changes, and in October 2016, we began discussions regarding adding the solid waste management department back into the DCD plan of operation. Those initial discussions led to why was the department removed in the first place, and there's a whole history to that I won't go into. But right now, the current directive and initiatives to integrate solid waste management integrate the solid waste management plan into the Division of Community Development is something that we all are moving towards and trying to get back to now that we're past the initial phases of the COVID-19 lockdowns and moving into our new order of business. So what we're doing right now is going through all of the recommendations that have been made over the years for solid waste management on the Navajo Nation. We've reviewed policies, laws, all the various entities that existed and provided their written documents and recommendations over the years. With that helped inform the development of the solid waste management plan of operation, and also just the ongoing discussions we're having with the Navajo Nation Environmental Protection Agency. With that, I'll go ahead and go into what is being written for that proposed plan of operation on slide 30, and then we'll go into some of the areas we're continuing to work on in this plan of operation. The solid waste management program would be established again within the Division of Community Development. I want to thank leadership for making this a priority. I myself have a passion for helping us protect our environment, so I'm very glad that we are bringing this into our division again. For the objectives and goals of this department, we will develop a plan of operation and establish preliminary operating procedures for the Navajo Nation Solid Waste Authority. This will be in partnership and coordination with the Navajo Nation EPA and various entities that we've been in meetings with. We'll also seek funding to begin operation of the Solid Waste Authority. We'll manage existing Navajo Nation solid waste management contracts, and we'll educate Navajo Nation divisions and chapters about the Solid Waste Authority. Finally, our goals and objectives include developing a working partnership with the Navajo Nation Environmental Protection Agency for solid waste management compliance and regulation. In the next slide, we go over the solid waste management organizational makeup. And again, this is the minimum just to start off the department. The program manager within the department will be supervised by the DCD executive director, and the program manager will have a staff, a small staff to begin with. Right now we are planning for an administrative and support staff, and then also a planning and project management type of position so that we can get the solid waste management department off the ground and moving. The organizational structure, just as an example of our draft here, we do have the solid waste management department manager. It would be starting at a program manager level. As you know, within Navajo Nation, many programs are smaller than the larger departments. So initially, we'll be starting up as a program manager 2 position, and then we will have an office assistant to assist that manager, and then we are anticipating the need for a senior program project specialist to help with planning and project management for the solid waste management department. In the next slide, under the solid waste management department authorities, duties, and responsibilities, we do have the program manager reporting again to the executive director, and the program manager developing policies and procedures necessary for effective management of the solid waste management department and taking appropriate actions to accomplish the purposes of the department. There's a lot that will go into this in the next slides. And the solid waste management department will also conduct periodic reviews and evaluations of their staff. They'll prepare annual physical operating budgets for approval by the executive director, the executive branch oversight committees and the Navajo Nation Council. And then the program manager will also represent the solid waste management department at Navajo Nation, local, state, and federal levels. There definitely are many meetings we've been engaged in prior to the pandemic, and then when things did slow down, we tried to continue those communications to help us plan for this department with the local, state, federal, and Navajo Nation entities. On the next slide, we have additional duties, authorities, and responsibilities for the department. The Solid Waste Management Department will develop a plan of operation for the Navajo Nation Solid Waste Authority and present a plan for approval by the Navajo Nation Office of the President and the Navajo Nation Council. Solid Waste Management Department will also seek and secure funding from the Navajo Nation, federal, state, and other agencies. Currently, we continue to work with some of our partners in cost sharing and also addressing some of the larger solid waste management issues that we're dealing with currently. The department will also comply with requirements of internal Navajo Nation and external funding sources. The department will implement and maintain a central electronic filing and project tracking system. And our Solid Waste Management Department will assist in the application for external funding to administer projects that are consistent with the purpose of the Solid Waste Management Department. The department will also develop policies and procedures to implement the purpose of the Solid Waste Management Department, and we will provide technical support and training to the Navajo Nation divisions and chapters in the Solid Waste Authority program. The department will also purchase and inventory equipment and furnishings and carry out other duties and responsibilities as assigned. As this is a new department, we know that there will be a lot more areas we will be addressing as we get prepared with this department. So on slide 36, you'll see some of those additional areas that we will be developing for this new plan of operation. This is including identifying and securing funding, coordinating with other tribes, municipalities, counties, states, federal agencies. We'll be coordinating trainings and workshops out of this department, providing technical assistance, education, and planning. This will be closely coordinated with also our Club C trainings and also in our working with our chapters as they develop their community land use plans. And then also it will address getting our information on facility setup and maintenance addressed, and organizing other events like spring cleaning, trash pickup, and those types of things. That's all done in coordination with our partners. And lastly, the Solid Waste Management Department will provide all 110 chapters the proper trash receptacles to evaluate public dumping, public littering, and combat some of the hazardous waste from COVID. This again will be done with our partners, with Navajo Nation EPA. We'll also assist chapters with proper waste transfer, education, and awareness. Also assisting our chapters with community cleanup efforts, and then also education on recycling materials with various entities. We do have a couple of chapters that are modeling this right now, who are doing outstanding work in solid waste management. And so we have been meeting with those chapters and getting their feedback, listening to their recommendations and concerns, as well as they've already been deeply engaged in solid waste management at the chapter level. So with that, Shananta'a, that's an overview of our proposed plan of operation for the Navajo Nation Solid Waste Management Department.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jim Martin. Dr. Yelma, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Martin, for covering the solid waste. Chair and members of RDC, we also will move into our last section of our presentation, and this is slide 39. This last section just has 3 slides, and then we'll be open for any closing comments from our presentation, and then questions. And this last section is the Navajo Nation Rural Addressing or Addressing Authority. This is under RDC Resolution RDCO-0077-16. I will be co-presenting this with Mr. MC Baldwin in the Addressing Authority Department. Currently right now, as it's designed with our current department or current division plan of operation, we have 3 staff who work under the DCD administration. However, we feel that if the Rural Addressing Authority can become its own department, it will be subject to its own funding and possibility or potential to seek outside funding sources as well. Not to mention the great need for rural addressing and its potential to bring on additional staff for the responsibilities and duties outlined for rural addressing. And again, currently we have 3 staff who work closely with the local LRAC committees to address rural addressing at the local level. I do want to note with members of RDC, as I mentioned this last week in leadership to NABI, the Division of Community Development, we have worked on a complete scope of work to complete rural addressing in conjunction with working with DPS, Department of Public Safety, to complete E911. And in order for E911 to respond to all COVID matters, they need rural addressing to complete all mapping. As such, we submitted a complete proposal through the ARPA funds under the broadband expenditure. In the event that that is supported and appropriated, we feel that we are adjusting the rural addressing. Nonetheless, rural addressing is needed throughout Navajo Nation, and I'll proceed with the establishment and purpose of rural addressing. The establishment of rural addressing was established through the Division of Community Development within the executive branch of the Navajo Nation, and the purpose of addressing authority shall be to provide the Navajo Nation divisions, chapters, and other entities for rural addressing by the following ways: to provide local rural addressing committee, the LRAC training, to Navajo Nation chapter representation, to monitor rural addressing progress for all chapters with FDC, field data collection, mapping tools on the WIN system, and the LRAC tracker module. To educate the Navajo Nation chapters about physical address verification, which is also known as the PAV, for proof of residency to support rural addressing. B, facilitating LRAC training by assisting chapters with implementation of the FDC, the field data collection process, which also supports the U.S. Census local update community addresses, which is also known as the LUCA. E, to assist the chapters by facilitating the process of obtaining right-of-way clearances consistent with state, highway, and BIA requirements for centerline road street development. F, to ensure through the appropriations process that sufficient funds are identified to provide training and orientation as needed on the purpose said above. With that being said, our proposed address organization is in slide 42, and I'll read the narrative for that. So the personnel manager, this is proposed under our new plan of operation, that the program manager shall be hired and supervised by the executive director in accordance with the Navajo Nation Personnel Policies Manual. All other personnel shall be employed and compensated in accordance with applicable Navajo Nation personnel policies. 2, the program manager shall determine the need for staff, additional professional, technical, and administrative positions, and establishing field offices to carry out the purpose provided here within the goals and objectives of rural addressing. The organization of the rural addressing department shall be the addressing authority consists of the following sections and functions to accomplish the purpose, which is administration and administrative support. 1. 2 is the field, sorry, there's background noise here. The field office staff to consist of technicians and office assistants. The organizational chart is here in slide 42. As you can see, we have proposed eight sites, which will consist of the administration or administrative support and field office staff, which will consist of technicians and office assistants. Again, the rural addressing is also in the process of working with DPS with the anticipation of being supported through ARPA funds for a complete or for completion of rural addressing within the next 36 months. In the event that that route does happen and rural addressing is completed, this plan of operation still supports the maintenance and operation of local LRAC and training for the 110 chapters throughout the Navajo Nation, and continued assistance for LRAC training. So with that, Chair, I believe all departments have presented. We also presented the 2 proposed departments, which is the solid waste and the rural addressing. And that is in our presentation. What is not in our presentation, but I do want to just verbally mention, is we do have IT support, and our IT support team offer assistance to all 110 chapters, participate in the cyber team, and participate in the broadband middle mile team, and also provide ongoing communication through our DCD website and all of our logging systems, such as our portals and our WIN systems, for additional communications to chapters, including in our MIP systems. So we have a need there to just identify and let members of RDC know that we have an IT team, and they also carry on large responsibilities and duties as well. So with that, Chair and members of RDC, that will conclude our presentation, and we are all here on standby for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yellowman. Is Mr. Baldwin going to add anything to it?
Oh, thank you, Chair. If Mr. Baldwin can say a few words and add to the presentation, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. MC Baldwin.
Mr. Chair. Back to slide number 40. The letter A chapter has ada nego the outright members are being appointed. Standards by default CLUP committee members and Lini Ede Satona Nishbansilla Junigo Yahadna outright Ado B A Yaha Din Neo Na Nishigi on the ground activities for rural addressing Beditnini J Yaha Dide Haikishi Kinbita Ilja and that na Lihabaho one and that Jian Bahapataho one public buildings A chapter houses Ada Naha Hada Seko Nihe Kodo addressing authority office door Aishjandin Hilbahosendo Les Hedila Yisibita Ilja Eben Nache Naul Don the Eben Nache without a he hit Nil Nahalenshi or Les A Quagga letter B Hasna Alcohol be tracking Alrak trackers Nini AI Tanhulo Akonde at I see Yabit and Nish the Hala Koda de Nishija Adhanil Ehye Alcohol A Sato Nahas Long Sato Bedil Nish Yisi Bedil Nishot Asaban Sakis Ako Ha Hadida and Hinant one of the council delegates. She chapters Hag like Hanson Joko Ha Ede Bijidol Kill. It's like a dashboard module that we have through our web developer. Alcohol a ajot bedil no. I don't the letter C any November 2016 yeah you see what's the Real ID Act on the New Mexico side aja yeah that Alcohol ita McKinley County it didn't need the shake at the Navajo Nation de Nahakaki Nal Soste Yokadigi the proof of residence Nigi at Hayul Kit is the happy gata Beso so Nahapa o Ebenan Hik Adodel in the doles that they need Eben Nacha Ada Nihik Hojin Hikit in Halenik Itza Alcohol peso do bahalong dan de sato that this edition that and in khadel yed akoho anni do I see ge got the hotza nanasli akoho de sa chidin da yisni sa be driver's license da anni in date leo akwage shin ye dan ado wat chene so ya hadat el now al khade hot anal so si de yo kid akoho yaha web portal baholo. If they go to our website, they can request those documents. Akoho address ohot abenil nish kwa yahazna. Akoho IC niche na hot kwa ge athanil ego gibinina ados sacho dida rural addressing gi sacho bit on nishigi oya abit na hon na hadlini yosen. Akoho ado letter D. Yaha fill data collection bidit ninigi J Alrak aja hot binabanil tin hot the chapter has ago yitra hot nahatele yaha mapping tool bahalo nache yita yinis long hot aja hot beda inish akoho this sato US Census sato bidit Lila ako ejo kwage US Census day Luca updates isna ADG chose eid ako ho didek adnil ingo sato Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission bitin delnish ede aj hot yandat dide saho US Census stand no saho zero population ladan ako ne Nil ingo ni hitide alright and heka natjaho bin natche kode kaya Chicago the whole wanigi in hasla we captured point locations of where people live there's actually people living in zero populated areas that US Census claims to be the chapters on Lini do asko put out for the yos ida khala ad nahot ido and the hajo bakado walishin ashi bit the hoye beson dan tehit adat akoho an hisa kodo bin yenni nil ICR department liago bin nache hajo bisna an nisho johot ashin so bidan the wajo banan ada dole johot aban sahkes I don't the yaha did a team I see big il lado. We must identify the existing road network. Nila Ida Huneganigi bin Nachiko Haydila Egisi a team chodayos a con late Yahanani tego a co in Sessa budget this would a Haydila a team. Trayos ego adabat all the was jot ehigi aslish on the ground activity a coho the chapter nana does chinigi sat visit do the hanoda jo ha chapter linigi sato landa isle chapter resolution but not any Black Mesa hot ayanas kego a cook ade yaha ide a tingo road signs das ahagi ede aje asto yenia asana da se eshin ade nal sosie nas nan de dios nas eben nache endeta do na kin legal di kwa tini ko liye do la no ado eben nache kin for one nas neligi benada ilja. So you must have a road center line in order to establish a physical address for a particular addressable structure. Ako BIA road long yahajo kwage right away packet isna akwa nihje lao seti kwa at no. We're actually disturbing the surface of that spot to install a 40-inch base post so that we can install the intersection sign. Not chapter LRAC lini baka we have to follow MUTCD, Manual for Universal Traffic Control Devices. I don't care the NATO peso holongo akon hajobet ejnishin atonil into the Washington or the akon the so chapter asahadi bakaanel with the Sili any Navajo Nation shopping center in Hidin din habita idol jahnigo. And another good example is the dollar store in St. Michael's and the Dunley Burnside Junction so we use the mile markers along the state highway to give them the physical address number. Yes, that in Nisha call another word long a question I see don't lago that il nil that the new year could all ni question and a coede nakaba hono sendo and the dasato naka ni spehans no le console le ke shanta.
Yeah, Mr. Baldwin, Haro, Mrs. Nelson, Langy, rural addressing. Dr. Yellowman, back to you.
This is Samlatsa Jamartin. I'm going to be on the line for Dr. Yellowman as she had to take a call with the president right now. But we are completed with our presentation and we are ready for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Honorable members of RDC, do you have any comments or questions presented by DCD under Plan of Operation Update? So, Mr. Martin, I just have one question. Is this Plan of Operation ready to go forward now for a legislation?
Yeah, Honorable Chair, we do have our draft that we did send to Mr. Tahi that gives you an idea of our current master plan of operation with all of the plans of operation combined. There are still some strike throughs and revisions we have to work on with the Department of Justice, and then we'll be ready to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Honorable members of RDC, do you have any comments or questions? Tanya Kushila. Thank you. Let's
Chairman.
move down. Honorable Freeland.
Chairman, is this questions related to the overall presentation?
Yes.
What do we got next on the agenda?
Office of the Auditor General, what they're going to present is sanctioned chapters as well as the corrective action plans.
Okay. I want to go ahead and make a comment on the presentation then related to the plan of operation for DCD.
Okay, you may proceed, Honorable Freeland.
Thank you, Chairman, Resource Development Committee members, as well as Dr. Yellowman and your team, program managers as well. I just want to express my gratitude and say thank you for the work that you all put into this. And you know, I had an opportunity to work, of course, with the previous administration, but the previous year predecessor, and you know, just seeing the enhancement. I vote green. Just to see the enhancement of where DCD was then and where DCD is now, it speaks volume. And I definitely appreciate how far DCD has come, especially these last 3 years. And it attributes to leadership, it attributes to Dr. Yellowman, but it attributes to Mr. Jim Martin, Mr. Delguy, Mr. Baldwin, Mr. Atakai, all the leadership there that you all have bought into, refining and making DCD better. And I really do appreciate how far you have come. This plan of operation is a testament to that. I don't want to say all the blood, sweat, and tears, but all the hard work that you have put into this shows through this document. And when you're able to fulfill or accomplish such a huge task, such as what you presented, it really sets a tone to how far DCD has come and how far DCD will go. And I'm very proud of you all for doing this. I think all of us are, all of my colleagues, myself are. We're very proud of you all for doing this. It's a huge step. It's a very big step. So thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, team, everyone that's a part of division community development, whether you're at the agency level, the field level, Window Rock, wherever you are. You guys have done a tremendous amount of work, and we are very appreciative for that. So, Chairman, I just want to make that comment to the staff, to Dr. Yellowman, her team, and everyone that's a part of division community development. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Freeland. I believe what you stated is how you spoke for Resources and Development Committee. I was thinking along the same lines of how all this pages of the presentation, the PowerPoint, took a lot of work and effort to really finalize and make it easy to understand the work that DCD does, as well as ASC and all the staff that are there. These are only a partnership, and I would encourage you all to continue working well with the chapters and help them out. Thank you very much. Honorable Freeland, for your statement. Honorable members of RDC, any other comments or questions? None. Let me go back to Ms. Jim Martin. Ms. Jim Martin.
Yes, Shanant, I'm here. Thank you. We are, Ms. Yellowman is on a call with the President's office, but we did share the feedback with her. And thank you to Honorable Delegate Freeland for your support and the words. We do appreciate your continued guidance and recommendations. And we also, again, will continue to work on the final amendments and get the documents prepared for DOJ final review before it goes into legislation. We do encourage everyone to comment during the five-day comment period once it does go into the legislative process. So with that, Chair, we just want to thank you for your time and your support, and we can conclude our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. We also have on the call with us this morning Honorable Chairman Jamie Henyo. Could you introduce yourself, sir? Press *6 to unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Just FYI, I'm on the call listening to all the good conversation and what's happening there with community development, and just to committee notion that I'm just listening in and part of the conversation here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Represent Tojule, Alamo, and REMA. And currently I'm at Tojule at the chapter senior citizen doing the policy review with the chapter officials and kind of going over the financial assistance policy. So,
Thank you, Chairman Henyo. Mr. Tahi, could you send Chairman Henyo the PowerPoint presentation? I would appreciate it.
Will do, Chairman.
Okay. Honorable Otto So, be on the call. Honorable Otto So. None. Akoshinla. Thank you. We'll move down on the agenda. Next, we have the Officer of the Auditor General, Ms. Helen Brown. You're up as on the Sanctioned Chapters and Corrective Action Plan. The delineated topics are: what are the policies that defines a chapter becoming sanctioned and in need of a corrective action plan? Number two, how many chapters are currently in sanction? How many chapters are currently in their corrective action plans? Three, how many chapters have, one, successfully come out of sanction, and two, completed their corrective action plan? How do we ensure that chapters don't fall into these issues again? So, Ms. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to members of the RDC committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. To everyone that's on the call. My name is Helen Brown. I am the Delegated Auditor General for the Office of the Auditor General. So I want to say hello to everyone that's on the call, as well as the committee members. Before you, we're going to be presenting information, the latest information that we have on the chapter that are sanctioned and those that are currently under corrective action plan. My presentation, I did provide a PowerPoint to Mr. Tahi. I hope he was able to share that with the committee. And so basically, we just answered the questions that were posed as part of your agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that. And it's a fairly short presentation. And at the end, we can go ahead and answer any questions that you may have. So the first question is, what are the policies that defines a chapter becoming sanctioned? There really is not a policy. We do follow what is within our plan of operation, which is part of Title 12 in the Navajo Nation Code. And under Title 12, Chapter 1, Section 9, that grants the Auditor General the authority to recommend sanctions on a chapter or a program for failure to implement corrective measures. Whether a chapter implements applicable corrective measures is determined based on our audit work. And our audit work usually comprises of various audit procedures that we perform. One is we typically review records for a specified period that we will define. Generally, when we do follow-up reviews on corrective action plans, they are within a 6-month period. So that's the period that we will be focusing on. We will also be making inquiries with the chapter administration as well as the elected officials and the ASC staff that work closely with that particular chapter. We also observe chapter processes as well as activities. We want to see how the administration is carrying out certain processes at the local level with regards to various aspects of their financial activities. We also do what we call test work to verify compliance. The criteria that we generally use for a lot of our reviews is the 5 management system policies and procedures. So our test work is really focusing on verifying whether the administration as well as the officials are complying with those policies and procedures. And lastly, we will be evaluating internal controls. There are different types of internal controls that we typically expect the chapters to be exercising at the local level, such as segregation of duties, authorization, reconciliation, monitoring, enforcing their policies and procedures. Those are the types of internal controls that we will be evaluating. So that's our answer to that specific question that was posed. Going on to the next slide, the next question is, what are the policies that defines a chapter in need of a corrective action plan? Again, I will refer back to our plan of operations under Title 12, Chapter 1, Section 7C stipulates that audited chapters or programs shall submit a corrective action plan within 30 days after the audit report is issued by our office. The corrective action plan outlines what is needed to resolve an audit finding. It's a step-by-step plan of action to achieve targeted outcomes to resolve control deficiencies or other problems that were identified based on the audit. The corrective action plan shall include 1, corrective steps to be taken, 2, responsible parties to perform these steps, and 3, timelines to complete the corrective steps. Audited chapter and program shall have 1 year from the date the CAP was approved to implement the corrective steps. Going on to the next slide, the question is, how many chapters are currently in sanction? Right now, there are 8 chapters that are currently in sanction, and those are listed there. The first is Rama chapter, next is Bahasa chapter, White Horse Lake chapter, Mariana Lake chapter, Alamo chapter, Loop chapter, Crystal chapter, and White Cone chapter. Just want to make a note that Mariana Lake chapter is currently going through a review at this time, and we hope to have that completed within this first quarter. 3 chapters, Hard Rock, Tohajale, and Odepo, were recently recommended for sanction, but the Budget and Finance Committee tabled the applicable legislation for 6 months. Going on to the next page, how many chapters are currently in their corrective action plan? The best way to answer this question is the numbers that we are providing here. There are 8 chapters that are currently in sanction. They should be implementing their corrective action plans. That is the only way they're going to be getting out of sanction status to ensure that they have implemented their CAP. The 3 chapters whose legislations were tabled by BSC should still be implementing their corrective action plans as well. There are 2 chapters whose corrective action plans are proceeding through the legislative process for committee approval. And then there are 13 chapters who have submitted corrective action plans to our office for review. And the review process generally involves our review. We provide comments. If there are further revisions that are needed, we will return those back to the chapter, and we work back and forth with them until we come up with an effective corrective action plan. So that's what we are currently working with right now. Going on to the next slide, the question here is, how many chapters have successfully come out of sanction? We looked at the data from fiscal year 2019. There were 15 chapters that were in sanction status at that time. We are now in fiscal year 2022, and there are currently 8 chapters that are sanctioned. So within that 3-year period, approximately 7 chapters had their sanctions rescinded or lifted, and all withheld funds have been returned. The next question here is, how many chapters have completed their corrective action plan? We weren't really sure how to answer this question, but the information we provided here is that since fiscal year 2019, we have completed initial follow-up reviews of corrective action implementation for 9 chapters. And of this number, 5 chapters were successful in implementing their corrective action plans initially, and no sanctions were necessary. The remaining 4 chapters had to be recommended for sanctions, and subsequent follow-up reviews had to be performed to lift or rescind those sanctions. Other chapters had required multiple revisits and eventually had their sanctions lifted could also be noted as completing their corrective action plans. For example, it took 4 follow-up reviews for Sawmill chapter before their corrective action plan was being implemented and sanctions to be lifted. So really, what we're saying here is that what we're measuring this by is our initial follow-up review. When we initially go back out there to the chapter to follow up on their corrective action plan, we want to see that they're being implemented at that time so that we don't have to recommend sanctions. But sometimes that is not always the case. And so we have to go back and do multiple revisits before a chapter can be deemed to have fully implemented their CAP. So that's what we were basically saying and answering that question there. The last question here is, how do we ensure that chapters don't fall into these issues? So these are a number of things that we did stipulate here. First, they need to understand and to adhere to laws, regulations, policies, and procedures. There also needs to be a good understanding of internal controls and why they are important. We also indicated here that monitoring by the chapter officials, by ASC, by the chapter manager over their administrative support staff, wherever monitoring is occurring, it needs to be consistent. So that's what we're recommending. There should be training for both staff as well as officials. We included officials in here because they provide the monitoring and oversight aspect. So we feel it's important they need to understand how they need to carry out those duties and responsibilities in those areas. And I'm glad to hear that ASC is providing that type of training. I was listening to their presentation earlier. We also recommend that there should be ethics training on an annual basis for both staff and officials. This is important to understand why it's important to perform your job duties and responsibilities with ethical conduct. We also recommend to perform an annual review of your policies and procedures and make updates as they're needed. Sometimes when we do our audits, we find that some chapters will tell us how they carry out certain processes at their chapter, but then when we look at that against the written policies and procedures, they're not always consistent. So that's where it might get themselves in trouble. So we do recommend there should be an annual review of policies and procedures. We also recommend that staff should create and implement tools such as checklists to help implement these policies and procedures. This is particularly in cases where there's different types of documentation that need to be submitted by community members, say, for example, financial assistance. So we generally tell the administration it would be helpful for you to come up with a checklist just to make sure all the required documents have been received. So that's what we mean by tools there. Lastly, we say officials need to support the administration, but they also need to understand their roles and responsibility per Title 26. And the emphasis there is to provide support, but don't become directly involved in the administration. And there needs to be that distinction made there. So those are the things that we recommended as far as answering the question that was posed in this regard. In conclusion, our office, we continue to prioritize sanctioned chapters. If they should request for our office to come back for a revisit to perform another follow-up review, I believe the committee had asked us to do this a year or two ago, and we continue to do that. I followed up with the sanctioned chapters a few months back just to have them give me a status report. And based on the feedback I received, that's how we are scheduling certain chapters for revisits, and hence the one we're doing for Mariana Lake. They informed us that they were ready. They have implemented their cap. So that's what we're hoping the results will be determined based on our review. But we do continue to prioritize that from our office. Our office is also going to be resuming its efforts to amend our plan of operation. We started this about a year or so ago, trying to make some amendments to our plan of operation. We're going to go ahead and resume those efforts. We're going to be focusing on the sections regarding corrective action plans and sanctions. This is an ongoing concern and issue. We are coming up with some alternatives that we are going to take into consideration and propose as part of our amendments. And so that's what our plans are. We hope to maybe have some of those draft amendments by the second quarter of this fiscal year. Lastly, our office continues to explore options in terms of how we can revise our internal process with regards to the corrective action plans and the follow-up results that show lack of implementation. We certainly don't want to recommend sanctions for chapters or programs, but we do have to also recognize what the audits are showing, the results that are showing there. And so I think the recent legislations that were processed are being considered by RDC and BNF was really showing or telling us that there's no preference to have sanctions done against chapters. So we want to work with the chapters. We want to work with committees in that regard. So we're looking at our internal processes to see how we can do that. For the recent follow-up review that we did for one of the chapters, I elected to go ahead and provide another 6 months to that chapter to complete the implementation of their corrective action plan. And so I indicated in there that we can go back and do another revisit. And then based on that, we will make a formal recommendation. And so we really did stress to that chapter to focus on implementing the rest of their caps so that we don't have to recommend sanctions. So that's just an example of what we decided to make changes going into fiscal year 2022, and then hopefully incorporating some of those changes into our plan of operation amendments. And so I just wanted to share that with the committee as well, because we do recognize that nobody really wants to sanction chapters. It's the same on program side as well. But the idea of sanctions, when this was really introduced years ago from our office and as part of our plan of operation, was to provide an incentive to audited chapters and programs to address the audit findings that are being reported. We just didn't want them to be disregarded. We wanted these programs and chapters to really take immediate action to address those audit findings, and more important, to make improvements within their respective organizations. And so the sanctions was an incentive to motivate them and to do that, to make it a priority. But unfortunately, it doesn't always turn out that way. We didn't anticipate chapters having to be in sanctions for years and years, such as what happened with Sawmill. And so we certainly don't want to repeat that going forward. And so those are some of the things that we are taking under consideration and alternatives that we are trying to identify. I will be working closely with Solanta Jim Martin and her staff because we rely on them to provide that assistance to the chapter. So she has offered their input. She's offered to sit down with us and provide their perspective as well. So we will be working with them closely as we address these types of issues. So that is what I have to share with the committee today. In answering, I hope we did answer your questions that were posed as part of your agenda, but we are open to answer any questions you may have. I am on the call with Karen Bristol as well. She is our principal auditor. So thank you, sir. That completes my presentation at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown, for providing your presentation to leadership here, the oversight of chapters and DCD as well. So thank you for this presentation and taking the time to present. Ms. Brown. Honorable members of RDC, do you have any questions or comments? The Auditor General.
Chairman, this is Delegate So.
Delegate Chairman Otto, go ahead.
Yeah, I know you called on me a couple of times, and I just wanted to respond. And I was getting in trouble. Grandmother's sister. So, but I'm on the call, and I appreciate the conversation here by Community Development, the presenters, Pearl and ASC office. So,
okay, thank you. I'm glad that you were able to unmute, and also Honorable So. It is always good to listen to grandmas and moms. They know what they're talking about, so they always share their words of wisdom for us to abide by. So that's important also. Ms. Brown, I do appreciate your presentation. I do have a question, one question, and I understand that during the pandemic, some chapters, when they went and tried to purchase things, their checks were rejected. So, and what happened was some chapters decided to apply for credit cards to use to service their community members. And I'm watching some emails for my chapters. I believe that they're working with their chapter officials and staff to come up with a policy and to also add that into their fiscal management policies and procedures in their FMS. Are there any ramifications involved in having credit cards used by the local chapters? Ms. Brown?
Yes, thank you, Delegate, Delegate Ness for asking that question, posing that question. For the committee's information, our office is currently conducting a review of those chapters that have been identified to have credit or debit cards. And the purpose of our review is just to really understand, one, why those cards and debit cards were obtained, two, to make sure that there are controls in place for the use and management of these cards. Right now, we know that there's really no policies and procedures within the 5 management policies and procedures manual. And I think that's the reason why Ms. Jim Martin had mentioned earlier in her presentation that the chapter unit of DOJ is looking into revising that FMS policies and procedures manual. And this is one area that we had mentioned to them that it needs to be addressed. We understand from our office that, years ago, a lot of the chapters used to make purchases with checks. A lot of merchants and vendors would accept checks. Fast forward to current, a lot of these merchants and vendors don't wish to deal with checks anymore. So we really have to recognize different ways of making purchases and making payments. And one of those ways is using a debit card and a credit card. And so we understand that maybe is the transition some of these chapters are taking because they're acknowledging that. And we need to acknowledge that from our end too. And the intent of this audit is not to go in there and say you cannot have these cards, but at the same time, we need to make sure that there's accountability while chapters are using such cards. And so that's the reason why we're doing this review to evaluate how these chapters are managing those cards. And that's really the intent of that. And so I'm not sure, I have not seen anything that prohibits a chapter from obtaining a debit card or a credit card. But I always advise against that if there are no policies and procedures in place beforehand. We really need to create those things and put those things in place before those cards should be acquired. I always say we shouldn't be working backwards if that makes any sense. And so this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be evaluating that. The other concern that we have here is when you have credit cards, we need to make sure the chapters are being responsible in how they are charging on those cards, because we're basically and how those charges are being accounted for in their accounting system. Are they being posted to the correct account, to the right fund code? We want to make sure that there's any unauthorized charges that are being made. Some of these abuse are being disregarded. So those are things that we're going to be looking at in terms of controls. So I hope I answered your question, but we are currently doing a review of these debit cards and credit cards. I believe there's at least about maybe 12 or 15 chapters that currently have debit cards and credit cards. And so that's what we're looking. We're hoping to have this report finalized either by the end of this quarter or the early part of the second quarter. And so we will be providing our results to each of the chapters, these cards that we reviewed, and provide recommendations to them on how they can better manage those cards. If we do see high abuse or misuse of those cards, of course, we're going to recommend that those cards have to be, I guess, terminated, or other corrective actions are going to have to be taken. So I hope that answers your question, Delegate Naz. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I appreciate your response, and I'm glad that I did bring it up, and I'm sure my colleagues are now aware of what's happening at the local level. And I do agree on your recommendations as far as accountability and responsibility of using these debit credit cards at the local level. And I do agree that DOJ should review Navajo Nation laws pursuant to the usage of this, and for your office as well as DCD to assist chapters in amending their FMS as far as fiscal policies and procedures are concerned, to allow them to use these responsibly. So thank you, Ms. Brown. Honorable members of RDC, are there any other comments or questions? None? Hakushila, thank you very much. Honorable Ms. Brown, your response to the questions and our concerns. So now we can move forward. We're on number 4 of the agenda, questions, recommendations, and follow-ups. As we move along, we most likely will work together with DCD and Office of the Auditor General to help chapters get out of sanction and help them with their corrective action plans. I understand also that some chapters had their elections this past year and they took the oath of office in January, and previous administrations have had some of these, and the new administration adopted some of these, so it would allow them time to at least give them 6 months to work on the corrective action plans. And having to have this partnership between chapters, the Auditor General, as well as the Controller's Office and DCD, we can work on helping chapters to do well. With the plan of operation, DOJ just needs to have their final review, and after that, it'll be ready for legislation on DCD's plan of operation. So, Aishi, our recommendations are those, and we'll just continue to encourage them to work well with our chapters as well as the Auditor General today. So, if there's no other questions or comments, we can go ahead and adjourn.
Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, I have some brief comments, Chairman.
Honorable Vice Chair Walker, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Doyle, committee members, although the listening audience, although the presenters from ECD, although the departments, programs, although Auditor General's office, Ms. Brown. Thank you. Appreciate the time here at the end of the meeting here. Just wanted to say that things that are worth mentioning or important to mention, from the as an elected representative of our legislative districts and our chapters, thus our people, our community members, is that the 24th Navajo Nation Council, as well as the Nez Lizer administration, and all that are part of the Navajo Nation government now, I think we would be the only group that has this opportunity. And in part, it's unfortunate. And then another way of looking at it is we would have gained experience, because we would be the only group of leaders and administrators, I guess, either to be experiencing our nation's growth, development, as well as challenges before a major pandemic, although during a pandemic, then we pray and hope post-pandemic. But those scenarios, that should give us enough to understand how our government, the challenges that our government has, and the need to improve, areas to improve based on our experience pre, during, and post-pandemic, the effect that state of emergency has had, and then of course the greatest public health threat of recent time, maybe in our lifetimes. So how a nation, modern day tribal nation, responds to the people, to its people, to its membership, other use of government and resources and policies and funding. I wouldn't wish this on anyone else, from here on. But we are in that position to understand the effect of the pandemic, to make improvements to help better our service delivery, to help better ways to address situations at the local level through government, to protect the people, the health of the people, the lives of the people through our government and through our policies and resources. I think we would have gained so much from that. It's unfortunate it's a pandemic, and it's unfortunate that it's very, very dangerous pandemic. We have this opportunity, Shanant. I just wanted to make that comment here to leadership, and I'm not asking for a response from anyone, but it is a comment that I've been thinking about this because it applies in a lot of things we're currently at present, what we're doing. Yesterday's discussion 2 days ago, the discussion over with RDC Monday or Tuesday. As we look to reform some of the policies, even reforming the government, although applying or appropriating funding, allocating funding, applying funding. We're in this situation where we have a public threat everywhere we go. Lots of lessons to be learned. We already learned quite a bit. Johnson, I appreciate the information shared with us this morning, the leadership here. We moving forward, look forward to considering the legislations that will be proposed soon. There's some key areas of interest to all communities, and certainly myself. The waste management portion, the ASC, that local supervision is very, very key, very important for us to understand what that is and what it isn't. Chairman, all committee members, look forward to the development and the proposal, the legislation being presented to decision makers, council, and so forth. Chair, all everyone that's on the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair Walker. Leadership, we're all most certainly welcome to make any recommendations to DCD. We can email them and let them know as well what we would like to see change to make things better for the 110 chapters. So, any other comments or questions? If none, I will go ahead and adjourn at this time. It is 12:05, and thank you, Mr. Tahi, for putting all these leadership meetings and work sessions together for us. Thank you.
You're welcome, Chair.
You all have a good weekend and be safe out there. Thank you.